Dad, stay with me, please. The scream slices through the roar of the generator. Sparks burst in every direction, lighting up the cramped garage like a 4th of July gone wrong. Oil drips, tools scatter, the air smells like burned metal and fear. Richard John's gloved hands tremble as he tightens the final bolt on the half-built frame clamped to Arthur Williams' wheelchair. Sweat stings his eyes. His knuckles bleed where the wrench slipped minutes ago, but he doesn't stop. He can't. Every breath from the old man beside him sounds like it might be the last. Amelia William, still in her white silk blouse streaked with engine grease, crouches at her father's side, clutching his limp hand. "You said you could fix it," she cries, voice cracking through tears. "You promised me he'd make it." Welcome back. Before we continue, how are you all feeling today? Like, subscribe, and share the video. Let's make it go viral. Let's continue. "I'm fixing it." Richard snaps, voice low and urgent. The torch in his hand flares bright blue as he seals a line of molten steel. "But if you keep shouting, I can't concentrate." The overhead light flickers. For a second, everything goes dark except the glow of the torch and the red pulse of the machine's monitor. Arthur's breathing falters. One sharp inhale, then nothing. Amelia screams, "He's not breathing." Richard drops the torch, grabs the lever on the chair's side, and yanks it downward with a grunt. The machine jerks violently, gears grinding, electricity sparking across its wires. The old man's chest rises suddenly, a gasp, a cough, a ragged moan. Richard exhales, but only for heartbeat. The chair's left hydraulic joint hisses, leaking fluid down its side like blood. He curses under his breath. "Come on, hold together, damn it." Thunder cracks outside. Rain batters the roof, the smell of ozone mixing with diesel. The generator sputters, threatening to die. Amelia looks at him, eyes wide with terror. "If this doesn't work, then it's over." Richard cuts her off, voice gravelly, steady in a way that doesn't match the panic in his eyes. Arthur stirs, whispering something barely audible. Richard leans in. "What's that, sir?" The old man's lips twitch into a faint smile. "Didn't think you'd pull it off, mechanic." Richard blinks back tears he doesn't have time for. He forces the machine upright, stabilizing the frame. Amelia grips her father tighter, sobbing with relief as Arthur's breathing evens out. But the moment doesn't last. The power cuts out completely. The torch dies. The garage plunges into silence. Only the ticking of cooling metal fills the space. Richard stands frozen in the dark, chest heaving, eyes locked on the faint outline of Arthur's still figure. Then, from somewhere outside, a H of lightning floods the room, revealing the impossible. The old man's fingers twitch. Amelia gasps, her voice trembling. "He moved?" Richard's face goes pale. "No, that's not possible." She turns toward him, confusion and hope clashing in her tear-streaked eyes. "What did you just do to him?" Richard doesn't answer. His gaze drifts toward the half-finished blueprint pinned to the wall, the one marked with a single line of handwriting, "Prototype A, last chance." The sound of rain grows louder, pounding like a drum. Amelia looks from her father to Richard, desperate for an answer, but the mechanic only steps back, shaking his head slowly as realization hits him. "This wasn't supposed to work," he whispers. And before Amelia can respond, the machine jerks again, this time on its own. Cut to black. The power flickers once more, casting their shadows across the walls. Richard stares at the trembling machine, his voice barely above a whisper. 3 days ago, this was just a busted limousine and a routine repair. 3 days earlier, the Texas sun bled orange across the horizon, stretching long shadows over the cracked asphalt of Highway 281. Richard John leaned against the doorframe of his weather-beaten garage, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that had seen better days. Inside, an old radio murmured George Strait's Amarillo by Morning, and his 14-year-old son, Luke, wrestled with a rusty carburetor like it was a dragon that refused to die. "Careful with that," Richard called. "If you strip the threads again, you're buying dinner." Luke grinned. "Then I guess we're fasting, huh?" The moment was light, simple, until the low hum of an approaching engine broke it. A sleek black SUV rolled into view, gleaming like a shark in sunlight. It didn't belong here. Not in a town with one gas station, one diner, and one mechanic who charged half price out of guilt. The SUV sputtered, coughed, and died right in front of the garage. The back door opened first. A frail, silver-haired man in an expensive suit shifted awkwardly in a wheelchair that hummed softly with servo motors. Then came his daughter, Amelia William, her heels clicking like gunfire against the concrete, frustration already written across her face. "Of all places to break down," she muttered. "Dad, please just stay put." Arthur Williams' voice was thin but steady. "If I stayed put, I'd have been dead years ago, sweetheart." Richard stepped forward, wiping his hands. "Looks like you've got engine trouble, or bad luck. Maybe both." Amelia barely looked at him. "Can you fix it?" "Ma'am, I can fix just about anything," he said, then nodded toward Arthur's chair. "Except maybe that thing. It sounds like it's grinding metal on metal." Amelia frowned. "It's fine. That's how it's built." Arthur smiled faintly. Maybe it shouldn't be. Something in his tone stopped Richard cold. Pride, pain, and something else. Dignity refusing to die. Richard knelt, studying the machine's base. "You've got power loss in the left actuator. It's fighting itself." Arthur looked at him with weary amusement. "You're a mechanic, not a doctor." "Yeah," Richard said quietly. "But broken's broken. Doesn't matter what shape it takes." The silence that followed hung heavy, the first spark of something neither of them understood yet. The storm outside had rolled in fast, thick clouds, low thunder, and that strange kind of Texas rain that smelled like oil and dust. Richard worked under the SUV's hood while Luke fetched tools, but his attention kept drifting back to the humming chair in the corner. Arthur sat still, hands folded, watching the mechanic with the quiet patience of a man who'd learned to wait for miracles that never came. Amelia paced. Her phone buzzed with unread messages, but her eyes betrayed exhaustion more than worry. When the SUV finally roared back to life, Richard wiped his hands and turned toward the wheelchair. "You mind if I take a look at that thing?" he asked gently. Amelia's brow tightened. "It's not a thing. It's a custom-engineered chair designed by the best specialists in Dallas." Richard nodded. "Then they won't mind me admiring their work." He crouched beside it, running his fingers lightly along the frame, the way a craftsman inspects something sacred. He noticed the uneven wear on the casters, the strain in the left servo gear, the subtle lag when Arthur shifted his weight. "Does it always fight you when you turn?" Richard asked. Arthur's lips quirked upward. "You noticed that? It's like steering a truck with one bad tire," Richard muttered. "Looks fancy, but the alignment's killing your balance." Amelia crossed her arms. "Every doctor said his condition is neurological. You think a few bolts and gears are going to change that?" Richard didn't argue. He simply said, "Maybe it's not about changing what's broken. Maybe it's about making what's left work better." Arthur's hand rose slightly, silencing his daughter. His eyes, sharp despite the frailty, met Richard's. "Tell me what you see." Richard exhaled. "Too much resistance. Too much weight where it doesn't belong. Whoever built this didn't listen to the man using it. They just listened to the specs." Arthur chuckled weakly. "That sounds about right." Amelia's guard faltered for a split second. There was something unsettling about how easily this stranger could see what millions of dollars in care had missed. Sometimes, stories like this remind us, the world doesn't change because of genius or wealth. It changes when someone sees what others overlook. If you believe that still matters, don't just watch, stay. Because what happens next will make you question what impossible really means. Lightning flickered outside, washing the garage in white. Arthur looked at Richard and said quietly, "Do what you need to do, son." Amelia's eyes widened. "Dad." But Arthur didn't look away. "For once," he said, "let's trust the man who actually listens." The rain hadn't stopped all night. It drummed softly on the tin roof of the garage, each drop a heartbeat echoing through the dim light. Richard sat at his workbench, sleeves rolled to his elbows, a half-empty mug of cold coffee beside him. Sheets of paper littered the surface, rough sketches of gears, support joints, pressure ratios. Each line he drew felt less like engineering and more like prayer. Luke sat cross-legged nearby, holding a flashlight steady. "Dad, what's this part do?" he asked, pointing to a rough drawing of a pivot joint. "That's the knee stabilizer," Richard murmured. "It's what keeps the movement smooth. If it's off by even a fraction," he trailed off, staring at the lines. His hand tightened around a pencil. Luke frowned. "Like Mom's thing." Richard swallowed hard. The faint hum of the generator filled the silence. "Yeah," he said finally. "Like Mom's thing." He didn't need to explain. The faulty heart monitor that had failed when she needed it most. The one he'd taken apart afterward, piece by piece, trying to understand how something meant to save could destroy instead. Now, every screw, every weld, every calculation carried her memory. Fixing Arthur's chair wasn't just about helping a stranger. It was about making sure no one else suffered because of carelessness disguised as innovation. The door creaked open. Amelia stood there, rain in her hair, an expensive coat clutched tight around her shoulders. She hadn't meant to come back, but something about that man, his voice, his quiet certainty, had kept her awake. She watched in silence as Richard adjusted the mock-up joint, his face illuminated by the lamp's soft glow. No arrogance, no performance, just devotion. For the first time, she didn't see a mechanic covered in grease. She saw a man rebuilding hope with his bare hands. Richard didn't notice her until Luke whispered, "Dad, she's here." He turned, startled, eyes tired but gentle. Amelia stepped closer, her voice low. "You're not just fixing a machine, are you?" Richard looked down at the blueprints, then back up at her. "No," he said quietly. "I'm fixing what I couldn't before." The morning came gray and heavy, fog curling low over the fields behind the garage. Inside, the air felt charged, like a storm waiting to break. Richard double-checked every bolt and joint of the modified chair, his movement steady, but his pulse racing. Arthur sat quietly as Luke handed Richard a wrench, eyes fixed on the man who might just give him back a piece of his life. Amelia hovered near the door, arms folded, trying to mask her fear behind control. Richard crouched. "All right, Mr. William. We're going to power this up slow. Don't force anything. Just let it respond to you." Arthur gave a small nod. His knuckles were pale from gripping the armrests. The machine hummed faintly, a soft mechanical breath filling the silence. For a long moment, nothing. Then a twitch, barely noticeable, just the faintest curl of a finger against the armrest. Amelia gasped, hand flying to her mouth. "Was that?" "Yeah," Richard said softly. "It's starting." Another flicker. The wrist this time, trembling like it had forgotten how to move. Arthur's breath hitched. Tears welled, but he blinked them back. Amelia took a step closer, voice breaking. "Dad, you move?" Richard's tone stayed calm, controlled. "Small steps. That's how we start." Arthur managed a shaky laugh. "You mean to tell me I'm learning to drive again?" "Something like that," Richard said, smiling faintly. The three stood there, a billionaire's daughter, a broken father, and a small-town mechanic, bound together by one impossible moment that didn't feel impossible anymore. Sometimes, the first spark of hope doesn't roar. It whispers. If you've ever seen someone fight for one small miracle, one heartbeat, one breath, one twitch, you know how sacred that silence feels. Stay with us. The story isn't over. It's only beginning. Arthur's hand lifted again, stronger this time. Amelia sobbed quietly. Richard exhaled, relief and disbelief tangled in one breath. Arthur looked at him. "Guess you were right, son." Richard adjusted the brace. "No, sir," he said quietly. "You were." And as Arthur's fingers flexed again, Richard whispered to himself, "Tomorrow, we try standing." By midweek, the whole town was talking. Folks at the diner whispered about the billionaire holdup in Richard John's garage. Some said it was a lawsuit waiting to happen. Others swore the mechanic had found a way to make the crippled walk again. In a town where gossip traveled faster than oil through gravel, everyone had an opinion. Inside the garage, the air buzzed with tension. Amelia watched Richard tighten the last bolt on the chair's upgraded brace, her jaw set. "You're pushing him too fast," she said. "If something goes wrong." Richard didn't look up. "If we wait forever, nothing will change." Her voice cracked with anger she didn't want to show. "You don't understand what it's like to lose hope and get it back just to watch it die again." Richard froze, wrench in hand. I do, he said quietly. The words hung heavy between them, too real to challenge. Emilia turned away before he could see the guilt flicker in her eyes. In the corner, Luke knelt beside Arthur, showing him how to stretch his fingers using an old baseball. Dad used to help me with my grip like this, Luke said, smiling shyly. Arthur chuckled, his rough voice softening. Guess we're both learning to hold on again. The sound of their laughter, easy, human, filled the space that tension had left behind. That night, after Emilia thought everyone had gone home, she returned to grab her purse and stopped in the doorway. Richard was still there, hunched over his workbench, talking softly to a photo pinned above it, a woman with kind eyes and a bright smile. I'm trying, Jen, he whispered. I couldn't save you, but maybe I can save someone else. Emilia stood frozen, the sound of rain tapping against the metal roof, guilt and compassion warring in her chest. For the first time, she saw the weight he carried, not just on his shoulders but in his soul. She stepped back into the dark, heart pounding, realizing this wasn't about machines or miracles anymore. It was about faith, the kind that hurts to keep. The sun broke through the clouds that morning, the kind of Texas light that makes even rust shine like gold. The air inside the garage was still, thick with anticipation. Richard tightened the final strap on Arthur's leg braces and adjusted the control dial with surgeon-like precision. Arthur grinned faintly. You sure this contraption of yours can handle me? Richard smiled back. Only one way to find out. Emilia hovered nearby, arms wrapped around herself, her usual composure replaced by raw, trembling nerves. Luke stood beside her, silent, sensing something sacred was about to happen. Arthur gripped the walker's handles. For a long, unbearable moment, the only sound was the soft hum of the support motors. Then a low creak, a strain, and the faintest shift of weight. His arms trembled. His legs twitched once, twice. Richard's voice was calm but firm. Trust it. Don't force it. Let it move with you. Arthur's jaw clenched. He leaned forward, pressing into the walker. The braces responded. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but enough. His knees locked, his spine straightened. Inch by inch, breath by breath, he rose. Emilia gasped, stumbling backward. Oh my God, Dad. Arthur stood, shaking, crying, standing. A single tear rolled down Richard's cheek, hidden by the light. Luke's eyes went wide with disbelief. Arthur laughed, a broken, beautiful sound. I told you, he whispered hoarsely, I'd walk again. Emilia fell to her knees, tears spilling freely. You did it, Dad. You did it. Richard quietly stepped back, wiping his hands on a rag to hide the shaking. No, he murmured. You did. The garage filled with something more powerful than sound. That holy, impossible silence that comes right before a miracle fully sinks in. Arthur took another step, then another. The creak of metal, the faint hum of the brace motors, and the sound of a dream coming true. Outside, the town clock chimed noon. Richard turned toward the window, eyes distant, already thinking ahead. We'll need more adjustments, he said softly. He's not done yet. By the next morning, the miracle had a name and a headline. Local reporters crowded outside the garage, cameras flashing, voices calling over one another. Mr. John, how did you do it? Is it true Arthur Williams stood for the first time in 5 years? Richard hated every second of it. He wasn't built for spotlights. His hands belonged on tools, not microphones. Inside, Arthur sat proudly in his chair, waving off the attention with that same humble grin. Emilia stood beside him, calm but visibly shaken by the chaos she had once thrived in. When the noise finally quieted, she pulled Richard aside. You don't have to stay small, she said earnestly. My company could fund this, replicate it. You'd have a full lab, a salary most people only dream of. We could help thousands. Richard wiped his hands on a rag, thinking. You mean sell it, he said softly. Emilia hesitated. We make it accessible, scalable. He looked her dead in the eye. If I start charging for miracles, they stop being miracles. The words hit her harder than she expected. For the first time, Emilia Williams, the woman who'd built an empire on control and efficiency, didn't have a response. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant mesquite trees, Arthur rolled up beside Richard in the quiet garage. He handed him an envelope, his weathered hands shaking slightly. "What's this?" Richard asked. Arthur smiled. "The deed to this land. You gave me back my legs. I'm just returning what's been given." Richard blinked, speechless. Arthur chuckled. "Don't thank me, son. Just keep doing what you do best, fixing what's broken." Outside, Amelia stood by the open door listening. Her eyes softened, but there was conflict behind them, a storm she hadn't faced yet. As she watched Richard humbly sweep the workshop floor, she realized something had shifted. For the first time in years, she wasn't chasing success. She was searching for meaning. And deep down, she knew what she had to do next. 6 months later, the old garage had transformed into something unrecognizable. The cracked concrete was polished smooth, the walls freshly painted white with blue trim. Above the door hung a new sign, hand-cut from steel and welded by Richard himself. RJ Restorations, built for hope. Inside, the hum of machinery blended with laughter. Luke guided a young veteran through his first assisted steps, his teenage face glowing with purpose. Nearby, Arthur William, no longer in a wheelchair, strolled carefully, leaning on a cane only when needed. Every few steps, he'd pause, steady himself, and grin like a man still amazed by his own legs. Richard stood by the workbench, arms folded, surveying it all with quiet pride. He still couldn't believe how far they'd come, or how small the world had become when money was taken out of the equation. That's when he saw her. Amelia. She stood in the doorway. No bodyguards, no entourage, no billionaire armor, just jeans, a soft gray sweater, and a manila folder in her hands. "I heard there's a wait list now," she said with a smile. Richard chuckled. Word travels fast. She stepped forward and placed a folder on his bench. "That's my resignation letter. I'm done chasing numbers. I want to help you chase miracles." He froze, speechless. You're serious?" Her eyes shimmered in the soft workshop light. "You built miracles here, Richard. I just want to help them walk further." He didn't reply. He just nodded, humbled. Across the room, Arthur steadied a small girl testing a new mobility frame. She took one wobbly step, then another. Amelia's hand flew to her mouth as tears filled her eyes. Richard exhaled, whispering, "That's what it's all about." The sun dipped low outside, pouring golden light through the open garage doors, wrapping them all in its warmth. And if you've made it this far, if stories like this stir something real in you, maybe you're meant to stay. Not for the views, not for the noise, but for the reminder that kindness still builds miracles. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply not look away. Thank you for staying to the very end. Like, subscribe to get more of our video, comment, and share to make it go viral.